didn't start in February last year. The war started in 2014, and since 2014, NATO allies have provided support to Ukraine with training, with equipment, so the Ukrainian armed forces were much stronger in 2022 than they were in 2014. And of course that made a huge difference when President Putin decided to attack Ukraine.
This is my video update from St. Petersburg, Russia, on this Monday afternoon, July the 31st. Let's talk about some news. And right now I am in front of St. Catherine's Church, which is a Catholic church here in St. Petersburg, right on Nevsky Boulevard, Prospect Nevsky. And this is a beautiful, beautiful church. Amazing architecture. And they're selling some paintings right out here as well. And I thought this would be a good spot to do a video. And the big news of the day is what's going on in Niger. And the word is that the deposed president, so there's a coup in Niger. They arrested the president, they removed the president, and I believe they are holding the president of Niger, the military coup leaders. But the president of Niger, deposed and all, he has allegedly given the green light to France so that they can launch airstrikes against Niger. I don't know how he gave this order, the deposed president, but allegedly he's given the order for France to intervene in Niger and strike out at the coup government. So be quiet for now. Okay, so France looks like it's going to intervene. Germany said that they support whatever actions need to be taken against Niger. So Germany looks like they'll support airstrikes against Niger, and it looks like we might be heading for a French intervention in order to try to remove the coup government who removed the deposed president. And here's an interesting fact about Niger and why it's so important to the French. 30% of uranium that the French use comes from Niger, and 24% of uranium that is imported into the European Union comes from, you guessed it, Niger. So the EU is going to do whatever it needs to do. France will do whatever they have to do in order to remove this government that they see, this coup government that they see as friendly to Russia. That's how they see it. But they'll do whatever they need to do to remove this military government and restore the previous government back into power. And if it means airstrikes, then it looks like we may have French airstrikes. So, coup in Ukraine in 2014. the Maidan coup, Russia does not launch airstrikes against Kiev in order to restore the democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych. They don't launch airstrikes. What they do is that they allow the autonomous Republic of Crimea to decide if they would like to join the Russian Federation. So they allow a vote to take place. The people of Crimea unanimously vote to join the Russian Federation, and that was that. So there was no airstrike launched against the Kiev government, even though a coup took place in Ukraine in 2014. And because Russia actually allowed the people of Crimea to decide if they would like to join the Russian Federation, Russia got sanctions and condemnation from the collective West. Today, we have a coup in Niger. The government was removed, democratically elected government. I don't know much about the voting that took place, so I don't know how legit it was, but let's just say democratically elected government in Niger overthrown by a military coup, and it looks like the European Union and France are going to launch airstrikes against Niger in order to remove this coup government. And that's going to be seen as completely acceptable, completely legit. Do we understand the rules? I think we all understand the rules of the game, don't we? So that's what's going on in Niger, and we're going to have to follow this story closely. The next move, it looks like it's France's move, whether they decide to launch airstrikes or not. We have gotten reports that the military has not only arrested and deposed the president, but it looks like they're also taking into custody many of the president's ministers and cabinet members as well. So that's another development that is taking place in Niger. So let's now move on to Hungary. Let's take a walk. Let's go to the Church of the Savior on Spilt Blood. Let's go to that site. It's right down the street here. So Hungary, the Hungarian parliament, they had a vote on Sweden's membership into NATO, and Sweden didn't get the okay from the Hungarian parliament to join NATO. It failed. The vote for Sweden into NATO from the Hungarian parliament failed. And it failed because the ruling parties in the Hungarian parliament, from what I understand, were boycotting the vote. Hungary has a lot of outstanding, unresolved issues with the European Union. And so it looks like we're at a bit of an impasse with Sweden entering NATO and getting Hungary's approval. In October, the Turkish parliament is going to vote on Sweden's entry into NATO, and that's not a guarantee. Even though Erdogan gave his blessing, it's not a guarantee that Sweden is going to get the okay from the Turkish parliament. I imagine it will, and I imagine eventually Hungary is going to, the Hungarian parliament will give the okay, but still, this is Sweden into NATO. This is proving to be quite a tricky situation for, here we are, for NATO. Hasn't been an easy road to get Sweden into NATO. So let's walk over to the church over here of the Savior on Spilt Blood, and this church right here is the spot. It was built on the spot where Tsar Alexander II was assassinated. I believe his assassination was in I'm so bad with dates. In 1881, I believe, is when he was assassinated. believe he was at this spot, and anarchists, nihilist anarchists, I'm not sure, they revolutionaries, they threw a grenade, and it hit the Tsar's vehicle, and he got out, and he actually was alive from this grenade, and he fought one of these anarchists. I'll just say anarchists for now, and as he was fighting with these guys that tried to assassinate him, they threw another grenade, and that one did the trick, and the Tsar was taken back to the palace, where he later died from his wounds. So that's the story behind this church. And over there is the Cathedral of Kazan, dedicated to Our Lady of Kazan. Right down there. I'll take you there another day. There's just too many sights to see. This whole city is one museum. But the church was started by Alexander II's son, Alexander III, and it was actually finished. The construction was finished by Tsar Nicholas II in like 1907 is when the church was finally finished. And then during the Russian Revolution, the Bolsheviks, they pillaged and plundered the church when they came into power. So let's see, Hungary. We were talking about Hungary and NATO, and Sweden. And since we're on the subject of the European Union, how about the 12th sanctions package, which is being prepared as we speak. As we record this video, the European Union is preparing another sanctions package number 12, because they have to bring Russia's economy to tatters, I tell you. And this sanctions package is going to be interesting because, according to a German MEP, the European Union will indeed seize Russia's frozen assets and central bank frozen assets. So that is what's going to take place in this 12th sanctions package. I mean, this is it. This is about as to the end of sanctions as you can possibly get. So the European Union is going to pull the trigger, and they're going to seize around, 200 billion, maybe up or down, 200 billion plus or minus of Russian frozen assets. And yeah, bye-bye European Union, bye-bye Germany. That's all I have to say there. Because when they seize these assets, these central bank foreign reserves and these foreign assets, when they seize this stuff, the EU financial system is finito. It is done. So there's music here. So I'm gonna most likely have to strike that whole walk out. I'm gonna have to maybe turn down the volume, because the Beatles was playing as I was walking, and that guy was painting. He was doing some street art, and he had the Beatles come together playing. So I'm going to have to probably lower the volume as I was walking by in order to avoid a definite copyright strike. So what was I saying? Yeah, the 12th sanctions package. Goodbye EU, goodbye German financial system, goodbye EU financial architecture. No one's going to trust the European Union anymore. No foreign governments, no high net worth individuals, oligarchs, foreign businesses. They're going to start pulling out their money, their reserves, their assets from the European Union, because they understand that whatever they're doing to Russia's assets they're going to be doing it to their assets sooner or later. So there's going to be a whole bunch of music playing as I walk. So let me just walk and probably lower the volume again. I'm back. When you walk in the streets, you have to be careful because when music plays, unfortunately, you have to either cut those parts out or lower the volume because the YouTube algorithms are going to catch you. Maybe on like Rumble, Locals, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram. Maybe on those platforms, I'll keep the volume up because I'm not going to get dinged on those platforms. At least I think I'm not going to get dinged for copyright on those platforms. But for YouTube, everyone watching this on YouTube, you're going to probably have no volume in those sections of this walk and talk. So let's see here. I was talking about the EU's sanctions packages. I think those people in back of me are trolling me. Let's go this way. So let's see here. How about we talk about some UK Russia madness? How about we talk about some headlines from the UK, from the UK media, which are just bonkers. I mean, the UK media is losing it when it comes to Russia. So let's start off with a military analyst, Sean Bell, I believe this guy's name, and he was on a British TV channel. I don't know what channel he was on, but he said this about the conflict in Ukraine and Zelensky's strategy, if you want to call it that, of sending drones into Russian territory, specifically into Moscow and Crimea. And he compared what Zelensky is doing to what the US did in World War II to Japan. And this is what he said, and I quote, "American planes reached the target, but did not cause severe damage to Tokyo. From that moment on, Japan understood that they were in a state of military conflict. This was of strategic importance. Zelensky is following the same scenario, attacking Moscow with drones," Bell explains. This is what he said to British TV, is what we're seeing right now with Zelensky sending these drones into Crimea and into Moscow is no different than the U.S.'s strategy in engaging with Japan during World War II. And the worrying part about this statement from Bell is that it leads into the nuclear debate, the tactical nuke discussion that many neocons like to put out there with regards to this conflict. And I think that's what a comment like this leads into, because we all know what happened in World War II between the United States and Japan. And it seems to me that Bell is alluding to something of the sort that happened in Japan, happening also in Ukraine. Wow, so nice, so nice. crossed. So yeah, worrying statement from Mr. Sean Bell. We have an article from the UK which says that the Ministry of Defense destroyed Challenger tanks that could have gone to Ukraine, and this cost the UK taxpayer £4 million, and they're very upset about this, that the Ministry of Defense, instead of fixing up the tanks, these Challenger tanks, and sending them to Ukraine, they opted at destroying these tanks. That's what they chose, just destroy them and be done with them, and this cost £4 million, and this is very, very upsetting to the UK mainstream media because, you know, £4 million is, is, you know, a lot of money, especially when you compare it to the hundreds of billions that they've sent to the Zelensky regime. But hey, you know, who's counting? Who's counting on all the money sent, the unaccounted, unaudited money sent to the Zelensky regime? The UK taxpayer is out £4 million because they decided to destroy Challenger tanks. That's the big concern for the UK media. If the UK government had sent £4 million to Zelensky, just like as a loan or as a grant, you know, then it would have been okay. Or in a suitcase, Richie Sunak carried a suitcase with £4 million to Kiev. That would have been cool. But you know, the fact that they spent £4 million to destroy Challenger tanks, well, that's a no-no. They could have gone to Ukraine, is what the UK media is saying. But what this does show is that the UK Ministry of Defense does not want the Challenger tanks going to Ukraine because they fear that those Challenger tanks will get destroyed by the Russian military, and you'll have all kinds of videos and images of those tanks burning on the front line, like what happened to the Leopard tanks. And the UK Ministry of Defense and the UK military industrial complex wants none of that. They don't want images of burnt out Challenger tanks. Bad for business. So that's why they opted at just destroying these Challenger tanks, not even dealing with the issue of sending them to Ukraine. Just destroy them and be done with it. Because the first batch of Challenger tanks that were sent to Ukraine were going to be used in the big counteroffensive that offends me and offends you and offends everybody. They were going to be used in the counteroffensive, and then rumor has it the UK government, they told the Zelensky regime, please don't use the Challenger tanks in your big counteroffensive because we don't want them destroyed by the Russian military. So they asked Zelensky to not use Challenger tanks in the big counteroffensive because they didn't want those tanks destroyed. And that's why you don't see Challenger tanks on the front lines. You see Leopard tanks. And soon you're going to see U.S. Abrams tanks. And all those tanks are going to be destroyed. You better believe it. So that was an interesting headline. We have some more headlines. We have some more headlines coming out of the wacky world of UK mainstream media. How about this one? UK commandos train in the UK for Crimea invasion. The operation will involve strikes from air, land, and sea, with Ukrainian commandos using technology to undermine and paralyze Russian troops. This is coming from the UK Sunday Express. I'm not even going to comment on a ridiculous story like this one. And finally, we have an article from the Telegraph, UK, with the title, Ukraine isn't killing enough Russians. And so this article talks about how the Russian military is suffering catastrophic losses. The Russian economy is in tatters. The Ukraine military is destroying annihilating all of the Russian generals. So Russia is running out of generals. And Russia, of course, is running out of weapons. They're running out of weapons. And that's what this article talks about, at least in the beginning of this article. And then as you read further down this article, it starts to talk about how, you know, even though Russia's losing badly and Ukraine is winning big time, Ukraine is outmatched when it comes to artillery. Ukraine is outmatched when it comes to fighter jets. Ukraine is outmatched when it comes to long-range missiles. Ukraine is outmatched when it comes to soldiers on the battlefield. and there's absolutely nothing that the collective West can do to compete with Russia in these regards. Absolutely nothing. They can't produce the artillery that Russia produces. They can't match the fighter jets. They can't match the mobilized troops. Nothing. They can't match anything. And they even say that Russia has a 10-to-1 advantage. And then the article further on down, it admits that Ukraine's losses are most likely more than the losses incurred by the Russian military. So it actually makes that admission. But, you know, much further down in the article is when they actually decide to speak some truth. Let me see if I actually have the quote, if I've bookmarked the quote. I think I have. Give me 1 second. Where you can see the beautiful pond as I find this admission from the Telegraph that, yeah, you know, Russia's actually winning this thing. So forget everything that we wrote about in the first paragraphs. The truth is that Russia is winning this. Here we go. Although a wide range of numbers have been bandied around, casualty figures on both sides in this war have been impossible for outside observers to assess in any reliable way. But despite Kiev's claims, the likelihood is that attrition rates have not so far been in its favor. In other words, Ukraine is losing. That's what they're trying to say. So let's do a couple more stories, and we'll get to a bunch of clown worlds. And we'll talk a little bit about Starlink, because the New York Times, they put out an article. Let me see how I'm doing on time. Okay, I'm doing all right. I am doing all right on time. So the New York Times, they put out an article, and they said that in 2002, in the beginning of the special military operation, Ukraine military, the Zelensky regime, they wanted Starlink satellites to give them information on what's going on in Crimea. So they wanted to use the Starlink system to launch attacks into Crimea. And Elon Musk said, no, I'm not going to allow you guys to access Starlink or to use Starlink so that you can launch attacks in Crimea. He said that's an escalation too far. And this is what the New York Times reported on the other day. And then we had the New York Times coming out with this one. The Pentagon will purchase Starlink terminals for Ukraine, which Musk will not be able to disable. It's important that we let Ukraine attack Russia. This is according to the New York Times. So they put out an article where they claim that Musk blocked them from using Starlink to attack Crimea because that would lead to escalation that Musk did not want, even though he did allow the Zelensky regime to access Starlink within Ukraine. He did allow that, but he said Crimea is the red line, using Starlink to attack Crimea, and Russian territory is the red line. And as the New York Times is reporting on this, they conveniently throw out the Pentagon statement that they're going to use Starlink without Elon Musk's permission. They're going to find a workaround, is basically what the Pentagon is saying. And so we come back to the narrative that the U.S. is not involved in this conflict, right? We're not involved in this conflict at all. That's what Karine Jean-Pierre is going to say. That's what Kirby is going to say. That's what Blinken is going to say. We're not involved at all. But in this instance, we actually have the U.S. saying that they're going to find a hack to Starlink so that they can allow the Ukraine military to use the Starlink system so that they can launch attacks into все хорошо, все хорошо. Это будет YouTube. Конечно, Алекс Christoforou. Много людей. Конечно, да. Есть много людей. Это правда. Алекс Christoforou. Давай. На английском, да. Сейчас. Это. Окей? Да. Окей. Пока. So I don't know what they were doing behind me, but it's all good. It's all good. Nice people here in St. Petersburg. So let's see, where was I? Yeah, Starlink. So they're going to hack Starlink, and then they're going to come out and say that they're not a party to this war. Okay, whatever. Anyway, let's do a couple of clown worlds. And we're talking about Blinken. I mentioned Blinken, so let's start off with the Blinken clown world. And he was interviewed by 60 Minutes Australia on Sunday. And they asked Blinken a really easy question. We're talking like a softball question, right? Tee it up and hit it out of the park type of question. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, 60 Minutes, asks him, what is a bigger threat? Nuclear war or climate change? What's a greater threat to humanity? That's the exact question that they asked Blinken. What is a greater threat to humanity? Nuclear conflict or climate change? Now, a normal person knows the answer to this question, right? Nuclear war, of course. Especially with the conflicts today. What's going on today, everyone understands that the biggest threat, the greatest threat to humanity is nuclear war. Very, very easy question for Blinken to answer. But, Blinken, he messed this one up big time. But, his ideology, his climate change ideology, his climate change religion kicked in, and he couldn't answer this question. And this is what Blinken said. He said, and I quote, well, you can't, I think, have a hierarchy. Blinken replied, there are some things that are front and center, including potential conflict. But there's no doubt that climate represents an existential challenge to all of us. And then, let me move on here. And then Blinken said, and I quote, so for us, this is the existential challenge of our times. He continued, adding that this doesn't mean that in the meantime, there are not severe challenges to the international order, like Russia's aggression against Ukraine. In other words, what Blinken answered is that a bigger threat to humanity is kind of climate change. That's kind of what he answered. Oh boy, Blinken. And so, this is the climate change religion, and this is the neolibs and the neocons, the globalists, admitting that they believe, and I really do think that they believe that if it does come down to using nukes, tactical nukes in this conflict, that they can get away with it. They can come out on top if they used tactical nukes. I still feel like they have this belief that they can use the tactical nukes, win the conflict in Ukraine, and still come out of this thing in one piece. One thing's for sure: the neolibs, the globalists, they absolutely make a lot of money. They absolutely make a lot of money from both of these threats. They make money from climate change, and they make a whole boatload of money from conflict, including Ukraine. Boy, do they make a lot of money from Ukraine. But boy, do they make a lot of money from climate change. So both of these threats, we're talking big bucks for the neolibs and big bucks for the globalists and for the neocons. But the neocons, you know, they don't subscribe to the climate change, religion, and ideology. They're concerned with raw power. They just like power. That's what gets them off, is power. The neolibs, they love the power, they love the money, but they like to cover it up with this climate change, Russian aggression, virtue signaling. That's what they like to do. So beautiful. And this city it's a museum. This entire city is a museum. Anyway, I'm blown away by the beauty of St. Petersburg. So let's see here. Looks like the birds, they got into the trash over there. Anyway, let's do another clown world and we'll wrap this video up. And there's a billboard in Japan. I think this is real. I don't know if this is like AI. Maybe this is AI, or this is some sort of a deep fake. But it looks like it's real because there's a billboard in Japan with the message, "Stop Zelensky, stop war." You're seeing it on your screen right now. Stop Zelensky, stop war. That's what this billboard is saying. Now, this could be a fake. Looks real. Could be a fake, but I said I'll put this into this clown world segment. And I think that's it. Oh, and by the way, the World Bank, from what I read, the World Bank, they approved a $1.25 billion grant to Zelensky today. So another $1.25 billion in cash to the Zelensky regime. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. theduran.locals.com. We are on ODYSEE, BitChute, Rumble, Rockfin, and Telegram. And go to the Duran shop. 10% off. Use the code GOOD DAY. Take care.